thinking about maybe living and working in the U.S., maybe through investment.
Yeah.
Well, if that sounds like you, you've landed in the perfect spot. This deep dive is really tailored for exploring those different visa options based on the info you shared with us.
Right, and it's quite a range of opportunities, actually. Today, we're going to dive into three main pathways for foreign investors. There's the E-2 Treaty Investor Visa, the EB-5 Immigrant Investor Visa, and also the International Entrepreneur Parole Program, IEP for short.
And we've got a good mix of sources here, haven't we? Stuff from American Investment Visas, smartinvestorvisas.com, MSN, Tech Bullion.
Beck News Network, Wayon.com, digitaljournal.com.
Yeah.
Plus a pretty detailed guide from Smart Investor Visas and some articles talk about why the U.S. is still such a magnet for investors.
And even that example about typical businesses Armenian immigrants start gives a real flavor.
Exactly. And that image provided, it really shows the scope, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Agriculture, manufacturing, cybersecurity, tech. It's broad.
Absolutely. So our mission today, basically to break down these options, requirements, benefits, who they're really for. The goal is you walk away feeling well-informed, ready for next steps, and not, buried under jargon.
Makes sense.
Okay, let's kick things off with the E-2 Treaty Investor Visa. What's the core idea there?
So the E-2, it's fundamentally a non-immigrant visa. That's like the first key thing. It's for investors from specific countries, ones that have a commerce treaty with the U.S.
Ah, the treaty country requirement. So step one is checking if your country's on that list.
Definitely. And this visa lets you come to the U.S. and work by putting a substantial investment into a U.S. business. Importantly, one you'll actively manage.
Okay, let's talk about substantial investment. I find it interesting there isn't a hard number.
Right. It's not a fixed dollar amount. It's more about, is it enough capital to make the business succeed? And crucially, the money has to be actively at risk.
Meaning no passive stuff like just buying stocks or, say, a vacation home?
Exactly. That won't work. But we do have some real-world examples to give a feel for it, like a Japanese entrepreneur, $250,000 for a cleaning franchise in New York.
Okay.
Or a Mongolian investor, $150,000 into trucking in L.A., and a South Korean entrepreneur started a car repair shop in San Francisco with $100,000.
So you see, substantial really shifts depending on the business type and, I guess, where it is.
Precisely. That's what officials look at. Is the investment proportionally significant for that specific business in that location? A $100 K might be substantial for a small bakery in a rural town.
But probably not for a tech startup in Silicon Valley.
Exactly. And another big piece.
Yeah.
You have to be coming to actively develop and direct the business, own at least 50%, or have real operational control like a manager.
So no silent partners.
Right, you're running the show. And the business itself, it needs to be non-marginal.
Meaning
you have to make enough profit to support you and your family, not just like cover basic living costs. It needs to be a viable business on its own.
Yeah, got it. So if someone goes the E-2 route, what are the main upsides?
Well, several key benefits. First, it's potentially renewable indefinitely. As long as the business is running and meeting the rules, you can keep renewing. That's huge flexibility.
Yeah, that sounds significant.
Second, family can come too. Your spouse can apply for work authorization, and kids under 21, unmarried kids, can go to school.
Okay.
And for many, a big plus is the processing time. Compared to some other visa types, the E-2 tends to be, well, relatively faster.
So who's the ideal candidate for an E-2 then? Who does it fit best?
It's really ideal for entrepreneurs who want to run a U.S. business, but maybe aren't looking for permanent residency right away. It gives you that flexibility to build things without that immediate long-term commitment.
That makes sense. Okay, if someone's thinking, yeah, E-2 sounds like it might work, what's the actual application process look like? Just briefly.
Sure. Several stages. First, pick a legal structure, LLC, corporation, something like that.
Right.
Then register the business in your chosen state. Paperwork, maybe licenses. You'll need a physical location, an office or storefront, and get an EIN, that's an employer ID number, from the IRS for taxes.
Yeah.
Then, a really solid business plan.
Okay.
This is key. It has to show how the business will be profitable, how it benefits the economy.
Right. Proof it's viable.
Exactly. Then you submit the official form, the DS-160 usually, plus proof of your citizenship from a treaty country, evidence showing you've made the investment, business documents.
Lots of documents.
Oh, yeah. And finally, you prepare for and go to an interview at the U.S. Embassy or consulate back home. And dress sharp, be on time.
Yeah.
The usual advice.
It sounds like there are definitely places where things could get tricky. What are some common hurdles people hit? Any advice from experts like that attorney James Root?
Yeah, James Root points out a few common things. One is insufficient investment. Like we said, no magic number. But putting in more capital generally helps show it's substantial and viable long term.
Okay, so more is usually better.
Generally, yeah. Another issue is that marginal business concern. You really have to prove it can generate decent income. And documentation gaps, just being super thorough with paperwork is critical.
So be organized.
Very. Root's advice: start early. Get professional help, like an experienced immigration lawyer. Be totally upfront in your application. Focus on proving the business works. And stay informed about any rule changes.
And it's not just the money in the forms, is it? You mentioned location before. How important is where you set up the business for the E-2?
Oh, absolutely critical. The whole setup, your business structure, needs to show it's a serious, well-planned investment aiming for growth and creating jobs. You've got to research all the licenses, federal, state, local, for your industry.
Right, compliance?
And tax planning is huge. Federal, state, local taxes, how your business type affects that. Plus, employment laws, wages, safety, anti-discrimination, all that.
Lots to consider.
Definitely. And it's worth looking into whether certain areas offer incentives, like tax breaks or grants. Emerging markets might be interesting. Location can genuinely impact your visa chances and how well the business does.
And looking ahead, any thoughts on the business environment?
Well, there's some anticipation, looking towards 2025, of maybe fewer regulations, a potentially improved business climate under the new administration. That could influence location choices too.
Okay, good point. Let's shift gears now. Let's talk about a path that leads more directly to permanent residency, the EB-5 Immigrant Investor Visa.
Right. The EB-5 is fundamentally different. It is an immigrant visa. The whole point is getting a green card that's lawful permanent residency for you, your spouse, and unmarried kids under 21.
So definitely attractive for people seeking that permanent status.
Especially high net worth individuals, yeah. It involves a significant financial investment, and importantly, that investment has to create U.S. jobs.
Okay, significant financial investment. What are the numbers for EB-5?
They're substantial. Generally, it's at least $1.05 million invested into a U.S. business.
Wow, okay.
However, that amount drops to $800,000 if the investment is in what's called a targeted employment area, or TEA.
And a TA is?
It's a designated area, either rural or one with high unemployment, based on specific U.S. definitions.
Got it. And it's not just the money. You said job creation is key.
Absolutely central. The investment has to create, or in some cases, preserve at least 10 full-time jobs for U.S. workers. That's core to the program's goal of boosting the economy.
Makes sense.
And the investment needs to be in a new commercial enterprise. Basically, one set up after November 1990, or sometimes in what's called a troubled business.
A troubled business.
Yeah, one that's been around at least 2 years but has had significant financial losses recently. Investing there can sometimes qualify if it saves jobs.
Okay. So what are the main benefits of going the EB-5 route?
The biggest one: direct path to a green card for the whole immediate family. Unlike E-2's non-immigrant status, EB-5 is about permanent residency from the get-go.
That's a major difference.
Huge. Also, no nationality restrictions. Anyone from any country can apply, unlike the E-2's treaty requirement.
That opens it up considerably.
It does. And down the road, after 5 years with a green card, you can potentially apply for U.S. citizenship.
So who is the EB-5 really aimed at? Who finds this the most attractive option?
It's really tailored for people with significant capital who are serious about getting permanent U.S. residency. Especially appealing if they're willing to make those larger investments, perhaps focusing on projects in those targeted employment areas to get the lower investment threshold.
Right, the $800,000 level.
Exactly.
Okay. Let's cover our third option now, which sounds a bit different. The International Entrepreneur Parole, or IEP program.
Yeah.
You mentioned parole means temporary permission.
That's right. IEP is unique. It's not technically a visa. It's, like you said, temporary permission parole to be in the U.S. It's specifically for founders of promising startup companies.
Interesting. So startups, what do you need to show to qualify for IEP?
A few key things. First, you need significant ownership in a U.S. startup, at least 10%. And the startup has to be pretty new formed within the last 5 years.
Okay, 10% in a recent startup. What else?
Second, funding. The startup needs to have secured a significant investment from qualified U.S. investors, We're talking at least $250,000.
$250,000 from U.S. investors.
Or alternatively, received at least $100,000 in government grants.
Yeah.
This funding shows potential for, rapid growth and job creation.
Got it. Proof of potential.
Right. And finally, the entrepreneur applying must play an active central role in actually running the startup day to day.
What are the advantages of going this route, the IEP?
Well, the main thing is getting that temporary permission to stay and work in the U.S. Initially, it can be up to 30 months.
2.5 years.
Yeah, and potentially extendable for another 30 months. So it gives founders crucial time to build their business in the U.S. Plus, the spouse can apply for work authorization too, which is helpful for families.
Who is this IEP program really best for then?
It's a great option for startup founders. People with innovative businesses, strong growth potential, but maybe they don't meet the E-2 treaty rules or they don't have the huge capital for EB-5 just yet.
So it fills a gap for certain kinds of entrepreneurs.
Exactly. It provides a pathway for those with really promising, maybe tech-focused or innovative ideas to get started in the U.S.
Okay, we've covered a lot of detail on these three paths, E-2, EB-5, IEP. For someone listening trying to sort this out, how do they even start figuring out which one fits?
It really, it boils down to your personal situation.
Yeah.
A few key factors. Nationality is huge for the E-2, right? The treaty requirement.
Definitely.
Then how much capital do you actually have available? That points towards or away from EB-5 pretty quickly.
Makes sense.
And maybe most importantly, what are your long-term goals? Are you okay with the flexibility, but also the renewal needs of a non-immigrant visa like E-2? Is permanent residency the main goal, pointing to EB-5? Or is the immediate focus just getting your startup launched via IEP?
Those are the big questions to ask yourself. Now, stepping back a bit, it's clear the U.S. is still a major destination for investors. Why is that? What keeps drawing people in?
Yeah, several big reasons. The U.S. economy is just, well, incredibly strong and dynamic. You've got a huge consumer market, massive potential for growth.
Access to customer.
Right, and great access to capital, venture capital, angel investors, banks, a whole established ecosystem.
The legal and regulatory side is generally seen as business-friendly, though complex.
Sure.
Plus, there are often incentives, state or local, to attract investment. And, the workforce is highly skilled, diverse, fed by great universities.
And culturally.
Geographically.
Also, key advantages. You have major innovation hubs, Silicon Valley, Boston, others, creating these powerful ecosystems. Geographically, it's well-positioned for trade, good infrastructure. And despite, political noise sometimes, there's generally a high degree of political and economic stability, which investors really value.
Security for their investment.
Exactly. Predictability matters.
Now, when someone's thinking about the actual business, they could start something totally new or maybe buy into a franchise. How do those choices play into these visa paths?
Good question. Either approach can work. Starting from scratch or buying a franchise, both can potentially support these visa applications. The key is meeting the investment requirements and having a solid business plan for that specific visa.
So a franchise might offer, brand recognition, support?
Yeah, exactly. Brand name, maybe a proven system. That can sometimes make it easier to show viability to immigration officials.
Yeah.
But you might have less control, less flexibility.
Whereas starting your own thing
gives you total control, total flexibility. But you're building everything, the brand, the systems from zero, potentially more risk, more uncertainty.
So either way, it comes back to the investment level and the business plan matching the visa rules.
Precisely. Substantial investment, clear plan for growth, job creation potential. Those are the crucial elements for the visa, regardless of whether it's a new startup or a franchise.
Thinking about choosing what kind of business to start or invest in, what are the really critical factors someone should weigh, especially if a visa is part of the goal? That Smart Investor Visas guide had some points on this, right?
Yes, it did.
Yeah.
Really important things to consider, like how involved do you actually want to be? Hands-on management or more passive?
Okay.
What kind of business genuinely interests you? What's your background, your industry experience? Be honest about your skills.
Right. Play to your strengths.
Definitely. And of course, how much can you realistically invest? What's your tolerance for risk? What are your real goals? Fast growth, steady income, just meeting visa rules.
How much time can you commit?
Crucial. And things like, are you familiar with U.S. business culture? Language? Do you have preferred location? Any licenses or certifications you already have?
That's a lot to think through.
It is. The guide stresses doing thorough research, getting professional advice, business consultants, lawyers, and having that rock-solid business plan. And remembering, business is risky. Market challenges, money issues, operational headaches, cultural hurdles, they're all part of it.
Definitely need to go in eyes wide open.
Yeah.
What about specific industries? Are there sectors that look particularly promising right now in the U.S.?
Yeah, based on some of those sources like one.com and that image we saw, several areas stand out. Ag tech, agriculture technology is growing fast. Think IoT, drones, AI, and farming.
Interesting.
The broader tech sector is always hot. AI, cybersecurity, cloud computing, specialized healthcare, things like telemedicine, biotech, that's expanding rapidly too.
Telemedicine really took off recently.
Huge growth. E-commerce fulfillment, still massive demand with online shopping. And sustainable products, eco-friendly goods, green tech, that's a big growth area driven by consumer demand.
And these industries often fit the visa needs.
They often do. They tend to require decent capital investment and have strong potential for creating jobs, which aligns well with, say, E-2 or EB-5 requirements. That image really showed the range, didn't it? Farms, factories, data centers.
It really did. Okay, this all sounds pretty involved, navigating the business side and the visa side. How crucial is getting legal help? Is it really necessary?
I would say absolutely. Highly recommended. Getting an experienced immigration attorney involved can be, frankly, invaluable.
How so? What can they really help with?
Well, that article on the benefits laid it out clearly. They can first assess if you're even eligible for the visa you're considering. Help define and prove your investment meets the substantial test for E-2, or the dollar amounts for EB-5.
Okay.
They're crucial for crafting that persuasive business plan that meets immigration standards, showing ownership and control, proving the business isn't marginal for E-2.
Managing all the paperwork.
Exactly, guiding you through gathering all that documentation, prepping you for the consular interview, which can be tough, helping manage delays if they happen.
And just understanding the legal stuff.
Yes, understanding the complex legal details of U.S. immigration law and ensuring you stay compliant later on for renewals or extensions. It's really an investment in increasing your chances of success and avoiding costly mistakes.
Okay, that makes a strong case. So bringing it all together then, we've looked closely at these three main routes. E-2, great for flexibility, active management. EB-5, the direct path to a green card via significant investment. And IEP for innovative startup founders needing that initial permission.
Exactly. And as we've kind of hammered home, the best choice, it's really personal. It depends heavily on your nationality, your capital, and what you truly want long-term in the U.S.
So for everyone listening, the question to maybe mull over is, which of these paths really clicks with your own entrepreneurial dreams, your investment reality? Think about your comfort level with risk, your vision for the future, both life and business, and which industries really resonate with you and look promising in the U.S. market.
That's the core reflection needed. We definitely encourage exploring the resources we mentioned, and seriously, take that next step. Talk to experienced immigration lawyers about your specific situation. Maybe even look again at those examples of businesses immigrants have successfully started. It shows the incredible range of possibilities out there in the U.S.